Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. New audio emerged this week of Nancy Pelosi announcing that she is responsible for the events of January 6th insofar as she didn't call in the National Guard in time. She was angry. She should have. She's like, it's my responsibility. I should have done it. Take a listen.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
That's Nancy Pelosi. I take responsibility, she said on camera, caught by her daughter, the documentarian. For more on this, I want to get a reaction from the man who was in charge of the Capitol Police at the time. Chief Stephen Sund joins us on the phone right now. He's also the author of Courage Under Fire. Sir, good to have you with us.
Vince, it's good to be on, and it's great to have you back.
Thank you very much, sir. So what do you make of Nancy Pelosi now saying that it's my responsibility? I should have called the National Guard in.
I wish you would have thought of that before January 7th when she called for my resignation. I think she used a key word there, ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that, while we're under attack, I have to wait 71 minutes to get approval to bring in the National Guard. And it's ridiculous that it's denied the National Guard twice on January 3rd. They're the ones that passed the law that restricted me. I'm the only chief of police in the United States of America that has a law that requires me to go and get Capitol Police Board approval and leadership, congressional leadership approval to bring in any executive agencies to help the men and women in my department, and I was denied.
And you put these requests to the respective sergeant-at-arms of both the House and the Senate. In the House, that man reports to Nancy Pelosi, right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And you were denied.
That is correct. Denied multiple times. Went again twice on Sunday, January 3rd. January 3rd was the inaugural day of the 117th Congress, so we were all working. I went over in person to ask, and the House Sergeant at Arms said he didn't like the optics of the National Guard on Capitol Hill and wouldn't approve my request. And then on January 3rd at 12:58, I made my first request to him for National Guard. Now we're under attack. My fence line on the west front has now been breached. And he says he's going to run it up the chain. That's his chain of command, which goes right up to the Speaker of the House, Speaker Pelosi. And multiple calls I made to him while I was also making multiple calls to my law enforcement partners requesting any assistance I could get. And it took 71 minutes to get that approval.
The House Sergeant at Arms at the time was Paul Irving. What, in your perspective, was his relationship to Nancy Pelosi? Was he effectively her spokesman?
Oh, absolutely. He didn't make a decision without input from her. He was extremely loyal. He turned to her for all sorts of decisions. And I think he was concerned when I first approached him on the 3rd. When I look back on it, his concern for optics was definitely a concern for her. During the 2020 protest, she had referred to National Guard and federal, executive branch agencies on the streets of America as stormtroopers. And I think he was worried about that. And then why the reluctance on January 6th, I have no idea. I called him multiple times asking, where are we on the request? He said, any minute, I'm running it up the chain. Any minute, I'll be right back to you. Repeatedly. I called 11 times to get updates, and it took 71 minutes.
Well, the effect of that, of course, was to elongate the disorder. And that event has been used ever since as a predicate to restrict American liberty and attack the president's political opponents. So if you're being cynical about the events of that day, it's all been in the aftermath designed to serve Nancy Pelosi's agenda.
Well, it doesn't take much, even somebody to become cynical when you think about it. I mean, the first window of the Capitol wasn't broken for 81 minutes, and of 71 of those minutes, I was denied. Imagine if we had gotten those resources in. People don't realize the National Guard, there was 180 National Guard troops almost within eyesight of the Capitol. They were the next largest cadre of people besides the D.C. police. So I had actually prearranged at 10:59 in the morning. I actually called their executive assistant chief, Jeff Carroll, and requested assistance, and he put 7 platoons on Constitution Avenue. The National Guard was the next largest cadre, and they wouldn't send them to me.
So let me just to kind of play out the hypothetical. If things had gone as you had hoped, which is to get the National Guard in there for support and to establish some order ahead of time, do you believe that the events of January 6th would have ever taken place the way we saw them play out?
So there's a couple things there. One, I think we've now looked at 5 congressional reports that all talk about what an intelligence debacle this was, both with how it was handled, at the federal level, but also with how it was handled within my own agency.
Yeah.
2, if I had gone and when I requested the National Guard on January 3rd, all I wanted was unarmed National Guardsmen to help supplement my officers on the perimeter. I wasn't expecting big battles. I wasn't expecting any issues because that wasn't the intelligence I was getting. I just wanted more people to supplement because I had fence lines that was going to have very few people on it because of all the events we had going on inside the Capitol.
Right.
And I couldn't even get from the National Guard. I do believe that if we had if we had the intelligence, I would have had mutual aid. I would have had a 8-foot anti-scale fence. But I do believe if I would have had the National Guard there, it would have definitely been far less, or not even this. We wouldn't even be here right now because the fence line would have been protected.
And the Biden administration wouldn't spend the ensuing years arresting thousands upon thousands of people and prosecuting them. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing what has happened. I want to move to another topic. It's with you because I know you've got some firsthand experience dealing with the tragic of events now in 2017, a shooting at the Alexandria baseball field. That's where Republican lawmakers were practicing ahead of the congressional baseball game that year. And a Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer opened fire on them. The only thing in the end that really ended up saving their lives was 2 Capitol police officers were there protecting Steve Scalise at the time, who was, of course, very grievously injured in that attack. And they were able to stop the shooter. You had kind of a unique perspective that day. Tell us, Chief Sund, what you saw.
So at the time, I was their assistant chief in charge of operations, and I'd received a call in the morning. I think that happened right around 7:10 in the morning, and it was only a 10-minute battle exchange, and over 100 rounds were fired by both, all parties involved. But nonetheless, I get a call. I'm told that they have a shooting. We have some injured members of Congress. Some are going to be taken to Washington Hospital Center. So Matt Verderosa, who's the chief, he went down to Alexandria, down to the Eugene Simpson Park. I went up to Washington Hospital Center. I've been with D.C. Police for 25 years. I've been there many times. I know it, and I know we're going to have to set up a security detail. I get up there right after Eagle One, which is the United States United States Park Police helicopter landed and delivered one of the most critical injured to the hospital center. I walked in and recognized the medic, and I still get chills from this. The medic makes a beeline over to me and says, "Chief, you need to go in and probably say a couple of quick words to your officers your officer that's in there because it looks bad, and I don't think he's going to make it." I go walking in to try and comfort the officer as best I could, and it was Steve Scalise. It wasn't one of my officers. That's how bad it was, and it's so good that he is able to make it through, and only the bad guy suffered that day. When I say suffered, is deceased.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's absolutely incredible, and was there for most of the evening, and got a call from Secret Service right around probably about 8:50, and advised that President Trump was coming up there. Never knew it was his birthday. He never mentioned it to anybody that it was a birthday. And him and Melania Trump came up and spent approximately 2 hours. They talked to Crystal Griner, who was one of my agents, who was shot through the leg by the assailant, as well as visiting with the staff that was treating Scalise and others, and never mentioned it to anybody. That is his birthday.
Never mentioned. Well, yeah, and so he was there. How was he in that kind of intimate but trying moment?
Very, very supportive. I still remember when he came out. He spent time talking, like I said, to the nurses, and every time, because we walked. I first met him when he arrived at the arrival area. Gave him a briefing as we walked through the basement of the hospital up to the surgery areas. And every nurse's station we walked by, he stopped to tell them thank you. I thought that was impressive, knowing just how hard they work. And he listened attentively. He spent, I think, probably a little over 30 minutes with Crystal Griner and her family in her room, and then came out. and corralled a bunch of officers, including myself, for a quick photo before moving on. But he truly cared about the officers and what everybody had been through.
You know, it's interesting that you're talking about both of these subjects. First of all, thank you for this, Chief Son. But as I think about those events, I think most people probably, if I were to ask what date did that baseball shooting occur, I don't think most people would be able to answer the question because it's not the kind of thing that's been hammered away by the media routinely since June 14th of 2017. Yet January 6th of 2021 is mentioned, I think, probably on a daily basis by the corporate press since the events of that day. In the case of the attack by James Hodgkinson, the shooter that we're talking about, he had a list of Republican lawmakers in his pocket. He set out to attack Republican lawmakers. He opened fire on them and severely wounded Steve Scalise, among others. What does it tell you that only January 6th lives on in the mind of the American people and certainly the American news media, and not that attack on those Republican lawmakers?
Well, some of that may go hand in hand kind of with the direction we're going in with this is not only did he shoot and injure them, he first asked to see who was playing. And then when he's told it was the Republicans, then he went to his car and got his gun and started shooting. And when the investigation was done, the FBI said it was a random act. However, Brian Porter, who's the attorney for the Commonwealth of Alexandria, he hit the nail on the head. 6 months later, he put out a report saying it was a terrorist attack. I guess it's what the media focuses on right now. I do. I see that. You turn on the TV, and I rarely go through a day without seeing something about January 6th. But haven't seen anything about the shooting. I think there was a couple of times it was talked about last week as we came up on the baseball. We had the Congressional Baseball game just a couple of days ago, and I think I heard maybe once or twice, but nothing like you're hearing about January 6th.
Right, but January 6th in particular is used as a predicate for, there's all of this extremism all across the country, and we need to clamp down on, and we need to shut down all of this. And meanwhile, you get guys who are Bernie Sanders' campaign volunteer opens fire on a Republican congressman. Again, he has a list of Republican lawmakers in his pocket as he's shooting upon them. Asks specifically, as you mentioned, what political affiliation they had. Once he finds out they're Republicans, shoots them. We don't get anything. We don't get any sort of after action from the relevant agencies saying that they're going to dig deeper into these types of threats against lawmakers.
It does seem like what you're talking about. It does seem like it's being treated completely different than January 6th.
That's for sure. All right. Well, thank you for your perspective on both. Again, former United States Capitol Police Chief Stephen Son, and his book is Courage Under Fire. Chief Son, good to talk to you today, sir. Thank you very much. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Dave calling in from Alexandria, line 2. Dave, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Yeah, hi, Vince. Happy Friday to you.
Thank you.
A little point of interest. I was biking through the Delray section of Alexandria a couple of weeks ago, and found out from one of the maintenance workers that Simpson Field is soon to be torn down and replaced by another ball field. Don't know the reasons for it. I mean, if you've ever seen Simpson Field, it really is a beautiful area and a beautiful field. But what's sort of interesting or more disturbing really is, Alexandria, we all know who runs that city. There remains an entry wound and an exit wound and a scuff mark on two of the vertical fence posts from the day of the shooting. And why the city, not why. I mean, I think we all know why the city hasn't bothered to mend those poles. I don't know. It's rather disgusting, disturbing.
You think
you want to phrase it.
You think it's a message by not doing that? My impression, as I'm thinking about it, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'd almost rather that it stay there in that way, like kind of as a reminder of what happened at that park.
I can understand that, but they did. There were several more bullet holes. I remember biking through there, soon after the incident, and you could see several other bullet holes. And they took care of those. So, yeah, perhaps you're right. Maybe it's serving as a reminder. I didn't see it that way.
Yeah. I just looked it up as you were telling me that they apparently they are conducting a renovation project of Eugene Simpson Park. So there's a bunch of things. They're improving the dugouts, installing new bleachers, putting new plants in. So, well, anyway, whatever it is, hopefully it's worthwhile and good and maintains the beauty that you're talking about. I have been to that park. I went years ago prior to the shooting. I accompanied Congressman Louis Gohmert as he was practicing when early morning, one morning, all these Republicans out there trying to catch fly balls, tripping over each other, having trouble doing that. But it was amusing to watch. And I got to see one of these early morning practices there. And those guys, they liked practicing at that park. And then, of course, all that chaos in 2017 when that Democrat guy just opened fire on them. And it just drives me crazy, Dave, that the details of that day are very few are remembered in the public consciousness. Meanwhile, we're served the January 6th rigmarole on a daily basis.
Yeah. A little point of trivia about that park. I believe it was Simpson Field where the old Alexandria Dukes minor league ball team played in the late 70s. Well,
I'm going to take your word for that. And I'll save it next time I'm doing an Alexandria trivia night. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. Appreciate the call. A little update on what's going on in our community. They're renovating a baseball field, an important one. It's 5:29. Hey, good afternoon to you. 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Where we're making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The Meanderer in Chief is the headline on the New York Post today, referring to Joe Biden wandering away from all of the other world leaders at the G7 in Italy, having to be pulled back by Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Right this way, old man. They put him in a photo, and then you see his arm move. Did you see this video at all? His arm moves ever so slowly to put his aviator sunglasses on. Really slowly. He looks like, you ever been to the Hall of the Presidents at Disney World? You ever go there? And the animatronics, they move ever so slowly as they are presenting to you the story of our country. He looks like an animatronic. That's the way he moves. Robotically, slowly, gingerly. He's the president of the United States. And it's not just the American media, well, the honest members of the American media who have noticed. The international press is definitely noticing. Here's the British Sun and what they're saying about our president.
Also, last night, awkward moment with President Biden where he was looking very doddery. He was wandering around.
Doddery.
He sort of wandered off, and Giorgia Meloni, the Italian premier, had to sort of guide him back to the crowd. It was quite painful viewing.
Painful.
Everyone's putting a slight brave face on it this morning. We've got some more for that for the paper tomorrow. But yeah, you can see from that footage yourself. It's this is getting embarrassing now.
Embarrassing.
And, you do really wonder how President Biden is going to be able to run an election campaign in October and November for re-election. And if he won, is that a man you really think is going to get through the next 4 years?
I mean, you're right. It's absolutely painful to watch, and that clip's going viral currently on
Positively painful.
social media. Obviously, Donald Trump and the Republicans really looking to ham it up. I mean, what was going on? I mean, obviously, most G7 summits are diplomatic sprints. You expect to see the President of the United States, as other world leaders, doing a flurry of meetings.
It does make me think about, Trump at all these big, G7, G8, whatever the event was, NATO summits. Like all the guys are all trying to either crowd around Trump or Trump's just blowing past them. He's shoulder them out of the way. Hey, we got to get to the next thing. He's pushing past them. Meanwhile, Biden has to be dragged around by the elbow.
Doing the same thing?
No, he ducked out of the dinner last night, and frankly, Jack, I'm gonna ruin my story for the paper tomorrow by telling it to never mind the ballots. But my sources, diplomatic sources here, people I've been speaking to, say it's the worst they've ever seen Joe Biden. Wow. And he's in a bad way. He's losing focus in meetings. Sometimes he's very sharp, sometimes he's very much not. So some worrying developments there.
You have to go to the international press to get an honest assessment here. That's the truth. And it's funny, here in America, though, we keep getting these stories from our major newspapers and cable networks that, no, Joe Biden is so sharp behind closed doors. It's unbelievable, actually. He's the brightest guy in any room. That's why he wears those sunglasses. Yeah, it's so crazy. So crazy. So the English press has noticed. They're not alone. The Italian press, which, of course, is much closer to all of this, given their presence there, is also down on Joe. Breitbart headline today, Italian paper reports on videos of Joe Biden's declining health and, quote, rigid movements. Italy's largest paper reporting on all of this, the curious incident involving Joe Biden during the G7 summit. Corriere della Sera, a paper based in Milan and in circulation since the 1880s, reported a Thursday episode that appeared to show Biden wandering off into the distance before Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni turned him back to the group of world leaders watching a skydiving show. The video going viral on social media platforms, catching the attention of the foreign press. Corriere della Sera's Viviana Mazza reported the scene in an article titled, Biden and the Videos of His Rigid Movements. How is the president? A video in which the G7 leaders are observing the paratroopers' performance of the Fogare Brigade, and Biden steps away for a moment, recalled by Giorgia Meloni, who touches his arm, has gone viral. Critics describe it as a moment in which he, quote, gets distracted and wanders. Supporters note that in reality, he only turned around for a moment to compliment one of the paratroopers. Doubts about the age of the president, an 81-year-old man subjected to exhausting rhythms between international commitments and election campaigning, are not new to Americans. Also, in a rare interview Biden gave to Time magazine last month, the author notes, following the president into the Oval Office, that his, quote, stiff gait, muffled voice, erratic syntax clashes with the intense talkative appearance from when he was a senator or a vice president, end quote. The Trump campaign focuses a lot on this. A video showing President Biden, who seems to try to sit on a chair that's not even there during the anniversary of the Normandy landings, also went viral. But it was partial footage and therefore distorted, as the Associated Press noted, because in the complete one, the American president looks back, sees a chair, and sits down slowly after a pause. Did you see the full context video? There was no chair in the video that they're referencing. It was Joe Biden squatted down and embarrassed the country. In other moments, such as the Juneteenth ceremony a few days ago at the White House, the Italian paper reports, Biden smiles but is immobile and a little out of place while everybody around him is dancing. They go on in an article published by the Wall Street Journal in the days past. Republican lawmakers under anonymity told anecdotes about the slowness and yielding of the 81-year-old American president in closed-door meetings, in which they discussed issues such as funds for Ukraine and the debt ceiling. In one of these meetings in January, the American president, the authors wrote, he had a voice, quote, so faint that some people had difficulty hearing it, paused for a long time, and closed his eyes for so long that they wondered if he was still tuned. The spokesman for Biden, Andrew Bates, defined the Republicans' comments as, quote, politically motivated, and said foreign leaders, experts, and even the same Republicans in Congress have recognized that Biden, quote, is an expert leader. And if he happens to retell the same story over again, he's always done it, even before he was 81 years old. So anyway, the press, the international press is very concerned about the health of the American president. They think he's not moving well, to say the least. Meanwhile, President Bite Me has a fresh headline on his dog attacks. Biden has repeatedly watched his dog attack Secret Service members, and the staff had to wish each other to have a safe shift ahead of each passing day. According to the New York Post, relying on information obtained here from Judicial Watch, which has been all over this story, Dateline Washington, President Biden repeatedly watched his German Shepherd Commander attack Secret Service members who wished each other a, quote, safe shift as the number of incidents mounted, with one exasperated workplace safety professional urging the use of a muzzle, agency records show. The number of dog attacks that involved Commander, who the White House said in February was given away after more than 2 years of terrorizing professionals assigned to protect Biden, and former First Dog Major, who was rehomed in 2021 after also attacking personnel. I don't think I knew that. They literally got rid of both of these dogs, apparently. They got rid of Commander, they gave him away, and they rehomed Major. I presume that means they also gave Major away because they're incapable of actually leading a dog. The attacks could top 36, according to the newly surfaced records. That's a lot of people attacked by the dogs. The 81-year-old president reportedly accused a Secret Service agent of lying. This is so typical. about being attacked by Major during his first year in office, but was present for at least 3 separate attacks involving Commander, according to files just released by Judicial Watch under Freedom of Information Act litigation. A previously unreported incident on September 12th of 2023 featured a pair of bites in which Commander tore holes in a Secret Service member's suit as Biden took him for a walk in the Kennedy Garden along the south lawn of the White House. I got to ask, who's letting Joe Biden walk German Shepherds? Whose idea was that? That Biden's going to do that? Biden, the man can barely walk by himself. They surround him with visual obstructions as he walks across the south lawn to the helicopter because they're fearful of what it looks like. How is the guy going to walk a dog? I don't even understand that. If it pulls on the leash, there goes the president of the United States. It's like so wild. Anyway, in the process, he's walking the dog, and the dogs are biting the Secret Service agents, tearing through their clothing, and, of course, drawing blood. The president, quote, took Commander on a leash to the Kennedy Garden this evening for a walk, the special agent assigned to the Presidential Protective Division wrote in a report. While Biden and Commander were in the Kennedy Garden, I was standing halfway from the booksellers lobby and the family theater, the agent wrote, referring to the area where the main White House connects to the East Wing. Quote, Biden opened the bookseller door and said, and then it's redacted, as I started to walk toward him to see if he needed help, Commander ran through his legs and bit my left arm through the front of my jacket. I pulled my arm away and yelled, no, the victim wrote. President Biden also yelled, redacted, to Commander. Biden then redacted. I obliged, and Commander let me pet him. When turning to close the door, the special agent continued, Commander jumped again and bit my left arm for the second time. Biden again yelled at Commander and attached the leash to him. My suit coat has 3 holes, one being all the way through. No skin was broken, at this time at least. Photos included in the report showed damage to the agent's suit and his dress shirt, for which they sought reimbursement. The latest batch of internal agency records show mounting frustration over the handling of the animals. On September 25th of 2023, following yet another attack involving Commander, a sergeant in the Secret Service's Uniform Division wrote a colleague, quote, FYI, there was a dog bite, and the officer may need to go to the hospital. Have a safe shift! Exclamation point. It's unclear if Biden was present for that incident. Also unclear if he was president. And then he continues. There's a bunch of records here. Secret Service agents begging to have the dog muzzled. Agents writing that they were bit and grabbed on the left forearm. This is all a direct reflection of Biden's dog handling. The whole family. They're not capable. And if you can't, dogs are so trainable. These German Shepherds are trainable. You can do it. It's entirely achievable. If you can't train a dog, you can't lead a country. If you can't train a dog, you are not able to lead a country. If you're mentally incompetent to stand trial for stealing classified documents, you're also too mentally incompetent to lead a country. How many more indicators do we need? We had a caller earlier this week say, but Biden is the perfect guy to keep on the ballot, so let's keep him there. That's the right guy to run against. I agree with that. But still, this is crazy. And it's a reflection on his leadership. If these dogs are biting everybody, that's Biden's fault. Scott's calling in from Castleton now. Line 2. Scott, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Colonnese Show.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for taking the call. Yeah,
yes,
so
sir.
You're absolutely right about pointing out all of the different news media around the world, noticing all of these gaps and weirdness. There's a reporter from Sky News who's absolutely fabulous on this. She puts out stuff almost every day about she just loves tearing Biden to pieces. And when Trump says, the world is laughing at us, this is where that comes from. All the other news media around the world are keying in on how bad Biden is, but you don't see it on our mainstream media. And
no, they run
somebody
cover.
The other day, some clips on my phone of Biden gaffing and all this. I played him one of the smash ups of him, and they're like, "Oh my God, really?" And I'm like, "How can you not see this? This is crazy."
Well, you're right about that. There's a massive censorship effort being undertaken here. It's almost like, the old plan to just block out FDR's legs. They would hold the camera in such a way that you couldn't tell that he was sitting in a wheelchair. But this is the same thing they do with Biden and the way he presents himself in public. The media goes out of its way to stop Americans from seeing this. But it's not exactly working because a lot of this is breaking through the broader American public. But here you have the international press being way more honest on this subject. Today, I'm watching as American news media is taking the White House line, oh, Biden wasn't wandering away. Everything was totally normal about that video that we saw where Giorgia Meloni literally had to drag him back to the other world leaders. There was nothing normal about that video at all.
Right, and video does a lot. You can come back and say, oh, he was just doing this, just doing that. But we know what we saw.
Yeah.
So it just makes it worse for the media, and we trust them even less.
Yeah. Who are you going to believe? Your lying eyes? Yeah, no, we saw it. We saw it. Scott, thank you very much. I appreciate the calls. So you see the video of Joe Biden meeting the Pope? He met Pope Francis, and then he smushed his forehead up against the Pope's head? I can't imagine a Catholic on planet Earth doing that. Joe Biden smushes his forehead against the Pope's forehead. Really creepy. Over on MSNBC, they're defending all of this out-of-control behavior. Here's Joe Scarborough this morning saying Biden did great at the G7.
It needs to be said. I mean, you have Joe Biden here with a schedule that would be brutal for anybody.
Oh, my gosh.
Any president of any age going to Europe, a couple times on D-Day and spending 5 days in France, going over to the G7.
In the middle of
this is positively North Korean.
The personal struggles.
In the middle of the personal struggles, the Hunter trial. And yesterday, I even critics were saying that he did a strong job, very good job representing the United States.
What critics is he even talking about?
Even though, again, we have some cheap fakes that the RNC, once again, spreading vicious lies about Joe Biden. But
I love that we pretend this guy was like a real Republican congressman at one point.
That's who they are.
We should point those out.
That's who they've become. We will point that in a second. But Jonathan Lemire, I was struck by the strong message as well that Joe Biden delivered yesterday. I mean, the United States and our great allies in Europe have really stood shoulder to shoulder here, other than Mike Johnson and Donald Trump holding up badly needed security aid to Ukraine. Now that roadblock has gotten passed. And people who actually love freedom and love democracy. And
the people who like locking up their political opponents and taking them off the ballot.
Authoritarians who invade other countries. It seems to me we have them outnumbered as far as people in Europe.
What a goober. And this guy, he's the guy who's like rooting on all of the election interference being done by Democrat prosecutors, to include the United States Department of Justice. Elsewhere on MSNBC, one of Biden's surrogates, Adrian Elrod had this to say.
Disinformation is alive and well. We have to use surrogates and voices across the country to combat this and make it clear that not only do we not play this game, but to your point, President Biden was out there literally representing America at the G7, saluting our troops, doing what he does as president of the United States. And look, we're going to see more of this. I mean, this is just the reality of campaigning in 2024. So we have to combat that disinformation. We have to hit it hard when it happens and make it clear that these are dirty tactics that MAGA Republicans are.
It's dirty to notice that the man is beyond senile, that he's have you seen his shoes? They look like life rafts. They're like these gigantic cushioned shoes designed to prevent him from falling over.
Using because they can't run on the issues, Lemire. They have to use these dirty tactics like this because they are not right with Americans on the issues. So we're going to see more of this. We're going to do what we can to combat it. But
the economy's in the toilet thanks to Biden. Everyone's prefers the policy of the last guy.
Take the voices of surrogates across the country. It does take the media to call it out. It does take social media platforms where a lot of Americans are getting their information to point it out as well. And
that's right. This won't be fixed by having a better president or better policies. It's just going to be better spin that'll solve all of this. Thanks, Adrian. Very wise. The great one, Mark Levin, is up next here on the legendary WMAL.